where our mains Edge 45 comes to their rescue. We have very limited time between prelims and mains. Very dedicated guidance, answer writing, continuous mentorship.
Good marks, good rank is equivalent to answer writing practice.
So it's like a proper lab, as the name itself says, where you can experiment, learn and excel.
So it's relevant, it's specific, it's well researched, and it's in a proper framework which you can use in answers.
And this is where mentoring plays a very important role. So that will be one aspect of mentoring where faculty will continuously engage with students who are enrolled.
The idea here is not to impart knowledge and content to you. If you people are writing mains examination, I'm dead sure that you people have already done that hard part. And we'll be covering them from the perspective of what questions UPSC has asked and what it can possibly ask related to those particular schemes or themes in the coming years.
The biggest mistake in UPSC prep, thinking that more material equals more marks. You don't need more material, you need a system that works. At Vision IS Delhi, our GS Foundation course is built to move you from confusion to clarity. Here's how. Right sequence. We teach subjects in an order that actually makes sense. So you don't just memorize, you understand. Integrated current affairs. No more separate notes. Use PT 365 and Mains 365 to link news directly to your syllabus. Early testing. Don't wait for the exam to find your gaps. We test and give one-on-one feedback from day one. Stop counting study hours and start counting your progress. Targeting UPSC 2027, build the foundation that toppers trust. Upcoming Delhi batches live and online available. Karol Bagh 8 May 11 am, 14th May 8 am, 22nd May 5 pm, 27th May 2 pm, 29th May 11 am. And GTB Nagar 15th May 6 pm, 22nd May 8 am. To register, visit our website or call us on the given numbers.
So the idea of this particular session is to talk about how do we ensure that the gap that we see in the performance of the students in ethics paper, general studies 4 paper in mains, can be bridged. We've seen over the last few years that there are candidates, those who've been able to secure as high as 150 plus marks in GS paper 4, and there have been some those who've been stuck in the low 90s or possibly even in the early hundreds. So what is it that makes the answer copy of some of the candidates very different from the ones those who've been able to secure 150? What is it that determines this gap of around 30 to 40 marks, and which can be a huge gap considering the kind of margins that exist today as far as the other general studies papers are concerned? UPSC introduced this particular paper of General Studies Paper 4 Ethics, Integrity and Aptitude in its syllabus in 2013. And there is something which is very peculiar about this particular paper which I notice. Out of all the 9 papers that you will be writing for the civil services examination in mains, and out of which 7 will be the ones which will be evaluated to count towards the final merit list, UPSC could have always introduced a paper on law, they could have introduced a paper on administration, they could have introduced a paper related to international relations, but they specifically chose to introduce a paper related to ethics, integrity and aptitude. And the reason for that is because they are already checking your knowledge, the content that you have, whether you have been able to understand the theory properly or not in other papers. In all the other 6 papers, you will be getting that opportunity to show what you know. But paper 4 general studies is one where UPSC is focused on not what you know, but who you are, how you think. More important than what you know, what your knowledge is, whether you know what are the teachings of Kautilya or what are the teachings of Buddha, or whether you know what are the teachings of Aristotle. UPSC is more focused on how you think about those teachings of Aristotle or Buddha or Kautilya. How do you think those teachings are relevant in present day governance? How, as a civil servant, you'd be able to apply those teachings in your work. And therefore, the emphasis in General Studies paper 4 should not be on assimilating knowledge, just like we do it in the other 3 General Studies paper. A very simple example will be that if I have to prepare the topic of internal security, then I have to understand what is Naxalism. I have to understand what are the causes that contributed to Naxalism. I have to understand what are the measures that have been taken by the government, either law and order or developmental, in order to curb Naxalism, whether they have been effective or not. What are the reforms that are required? What are the linkages that Naxalites have with various other organized criminal groups? What are the effects of Naxalism? What have been the damages that have been caused by the entire Naxal movement in India? So there is a lot of knowledge orientation which will be there in the other 3 General Studies paper. Here, when we are talking about General Studies paper 4 ethics, the idea is not just about what is Naxalism, but also understanding the depth of the topic. In ethics, for example, we are not only supposed to know what the definition of compassion is, but we are supposed to know how compassion can be a useful value which can be applied by a public administrator in their day-to-day functioning. We don't need to know only the theory which has been laid down by various scholars. We don't need to know only the deontological approach of Kant, but I need to know how to apply that deontological approach of Kant as well in my answers. And that's what we are going to be discussing. What we have seen over the years is that many students are very well prepared with content. They know the basic definitions, they have a few examples that are there in place, and despite that they are not able to breach that 120, 130 marks. And then there are certain candidates, those who are able to do extremely well in ethics, and that really shoots up their score. It will be very difficult for you to make this kind of a score in General Studies paper 1, 2 and 3. You must have noticed the scores that the students have been getting in General Studies paper 3. They have been usually in the mid 90s and even in the low 90s and high 80s for some of the students, or for some of these successful candidates as well. So there is not a lot of scope that you can get 120 there and you can have an advantage of 30 marks over your competitors. Same goes for GS paper 1 and 2 as well. GS paper 2, we have seen that most of the candidates have been performing well in the recent years. Many candidates, those who have been able to find the name in the merit list, have been able to get 110 plus as well. But the margin there is not a lot. In GS2, we have not really seen students or candidates successful securing 140 plus. But in ethics, we saw a few years back, Vishakha Yadav was able to get 162 in ethics. If you look at last year's rank 7, Dr. Raja, he has been able to secure 138 marks in ethics. So consistently, year after year, if you look at Aditya Srivastav's marks again, there is a huge difference that ethics can make. And how you prepare, how you approach the topic of ethics is therefore what becomes important. And that's what we are going to be discussing. My focus today is going to be only on section A of the paper, which is the theory section. And that's where I would like to begin with. If you look at the overall paper of ethics, one of the things that you would notice is that there are 2 sections in the paper. So one is section A, which is often called as theory section, but I don't think that it is only theory section. It is actually theory plus application of theory as well. In fact, I would say that emphasis is more on application of theory rather than the theory itself. The second one is section B, which will be completely case studies. Now the weightage of these 2 sections is equal. Maybe 5 marks here and there, but usually section A is 120 to 130 marks. And the same goes for case studies, 120 to 130 marks. if you score 1 mark in section A, it is going to be equivalent to 1 mark in section B. What I'm basically trying to say is that if the objective is to score the highest marks possible, it should not matter to me whether I am scoring marks from section B or section A. That is the first thing to keep in mind. Something that we have seen with some of the candidates year after year is that they tend to emphasize a lot on this particular section, case study section. They tend to even attempt this first in the paper rather than trying to attempt this. And they therefore have less time that is available for section A a lot of times. Many a times what happens is that instead of dividing the time evenly, if I have 3 hours in the paper, 1.5 hours to be given to this and 1.5 hours to be given to this, we typically see that what students do is that they allocate 2 hours to this, and then whatever remaining 1.25 hours that they have, they end up dedicating to section A. So section A suffers a lot. And as I said, that it does not really matter that whether you score 1 mark here or 1 mark there, the final merit list is not going to be seeing that where you have scored the marks from. In fact, we have observed that people, those who have been able to secure 120, 130 plus in ethics, and this is a pattern that we have seen mostly with most of the successful candidates, they actually tend to focus more on section A, because section A is actually more scoring as compared to section B. This is what our observation has been. The reason for that also is because in section A the questions are more objective in nature. At times a 10 marker may be split into 5 2 markers. They may give you 5 words, they may give you 5 ideas or ethical or philosophical concepts, and they may ask you to write about the relevance of those particular ideas or those particular concepts in your answers. So you have just 2 marks each for each of those values. If you can write something which is satisfactory enough for the examiner with the help of an example, you might even get 2 there. And it's possible that out of a 10 marker in section A of that kind of a question, you might even end up getting 7, 8, 9 as well. We don't really know that what is going behind the scenes in UPSC, but the understanding that we have been able to build is that those candidates, those who generally tend to focus on section B and ignore section A, are the ones those who end up getting stuck in that range of 90 to 100 marks in ethics. I am not saying that you should be ignoring the case study section. Of course, that is also equally important, because as I said earlier, 1 mark here, 1 mark there, the weightage is the same. But at the same time, do not ignore section A. In fact, as I am saying, our experience suggests that section A is highly scoring, more scoring than section B. So going by that logic, actually we should be spending more time on section A, but I am not suggesting that. I agree that in section B you have to read the case study, and that takes a bit of a time. You have to read it very carefully so that you do not mix on any facts or any particular situation in the case study. But having said that, it does not mean that you will spend less time on section A. So that is one thing which we have to keep in mind. In fact, many of our students in the past, those who have done well in ethics, they have told us that they began their paper with section A rather than starting with section B, which is a strategy that is adopted by most candidates. So my personal suggestion to you would be that, of course, case studies are important, and to analyze them is important, to look at previous year questions and the case studies that have been asked previously, bucketing them into various categories or classifying them and categorizing them, that which one falls into which category, and then having some predetermined templates, or one can say some already ready-made templates for those case studies will be useful. But having said that, section A is something which cannot be completely ignored. Now, I'm going to be talking about how do we therefore ensure that we do not get stuck in that range of 90, 100, 105, but rather we can breach that 130 plus marks. After observing multiple answered copies of the previous year toppers, we have been able to come out with some analysis, and that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today. As far as this particular section is concerned, section A syllabus, this is what it looks like. There are 8 topics. Just a second. Yeah. So there are 8 topics that have been given by UPSC. You'll see that these 8 topics, all of them are interconnected to each other. They are not in isolation. And that's the first thing that you need to observe and you need to completely embed in your mind. If you look at the first 2 topics, these are very generic topics. This is the entire universe of what ethics is, what values are, what morals are, what is the difference between them, and the entire application aspect will come in the second part of the syllabus. So this one is about what is the essence of ethics, what is the determinants of ethics, what are the factors that lead to ethics or ethical thinking in the society, what are the consequences of ethics in human actions, and so on and so forth. The third topic is, once I know the ethics, then what is it that I need to do as a part of my thinking in order to be an ethical person, in order to show ethical attitude, in order to show ethical actions. The fourth is about aptitude. Specifically in context of civil services, what are the values, what are the ethical principles that a civil servant should be possessing? And then when we move further, emotional intelligence. I may have all the principles, all the ethics and the values, but if I am not able to perform under pressure, if I get stressed by someone putting some external pressure on me, then none of these values or none of these principles are going to be of any use. So emotional intelligence becomes a very important factor in determining how these particular ethics or principles would be applied by any individual while they are in the civil services. And that's why specific emphasis on emotional intelligence as a principle, as a value. And then once we are done with that, then what is the heritage that has been created by various scholars, moral thinkers, philosophers, that can help us in developing the right attitude, as well as understanding what are the kind of morals, principles, values that a civil servant must possess. These thinkings, these thoughts of any of the moral philosophers, thinkers, can also help us in navigating difficult situations that we face while we are in administrative roles. And then lastly, these 2 particular topics that have been given, which is one related to public service values and ethics in public administration, and the second one, probity in governance, is how will a civil servant apply emotional intelligence, apply the contributions, thinking, philosophy of various scholars, philosophers, thinkers, and also would be able to utilize his aptitude for solving various administrative challenges that he faces on a day-to-day basis in government. So everything is interconnected, and it's therefore important that when you are preparing ethics, you do not leave anything, because we will see in questions, you need to know all the concepts at once, and you need to draw from different concepts where we are writing answers. Our answers should not necessarily be compartmentalized. If I am writing answer on a question where the examiner is asking me about importance of compassion, I can always bring in the importance of emotional intelligence as well in being compassionate. Because being emotionally intelligent means not only being able to understand my own emotions and navigate my own feelings, but also be able to understand the feelings and the emotions of the other individual. That is what emotional intelligence ultimately is all about. And if you're not an emotionally intelligent person, how can you be expected to be a compassionate individual? Because to be compassionate, to be empathetic, you need to put yourself in the shoes of the other person. You need to be able to relate to the pain and the suffering of the other individual. And that can only happen when I have emotional intelligence. So if there is a question that has been asked on defining compassion and importance of compassion and inculcating compassion, Why should I restrict my answer only to what I know about compassion? Why should I not try and relate it to some of the other things as well that I have read as a part of my ethics preparation? Why should I not be using the thoughts that may have been expressed by a Nelson Mandela or a Dalai Lama or a Mahatma Gandhi or an Abraham Lincoln on the value of compassion while I am writing the answer with respect to compassion as a foundational value of civil service? So therefore, one of the most important things that you need to do if you have to do well in ethics paper is that you should literally remember and memorize this entire syllabus of section A completely. It should be on the tips of your hands. How do I do that? Every day I must spend around 5 to 10 minutes, and that is all that is required, on reading the syllabus of ethics paper. And reading here does not mean just superficial reading where I will just read it that ethics and human interface, essence, determinants, consequences of ethics in human actions. When I am reading it every day, I need to think, what exactly do determinants of ethics means? What exactly do consequences of ethics in human actions imply? What is the meaning of objectivity? If I have to prepare the value of objectivity for the examination, then what all I need to know about it? What is objectivity? What are the challenges that are faced by civil servants in ensuring objective thinking within the government? What are the reasons of keeping objectivity as one of the foundational values of civil services? Are there any examples of civil servants, those who have been able to show objectivity in their actions? Or are there any measures that have been taken by the government in order to promote objectivity in public administration? What are the ways in which this can be strengthened further? Is objectivity alone enough, or do I need to be compassionate also along with being objective? Is being objective alone enough, or do I need to ensure some kind of accountability mechanisms as well? So therefore, I have to sit with the syllabus every day and brainstorm over various aspects that have been mentioned in the syllabus. I don't need to do it for all the topics on a daily basis because this will take a lot of time. But what I can do is that today, when I sit with the syllabus, I will be analyzing the aptitude and foundational values of civil services as a topic. So topic number 4 will be what I'll be reading today. So when I'll sit down with a piece of paper, I will try to think that if I have to think about the syllabus, if I have to read the syllabus, what does it mean? I have to then write down aptitude. This is one term that has been mentioned in the syllabus. Now I need to start thinking on the basics of first principles, which is I first need to prepare what is aptitude, what is the meaning, definition of the term aptitude. Then I can come to the next question of why it is important to study about aptitude in civil services. What is the importance that aptitude plays in civil services? What kind of an aptitude does a civil servant need to possess? Right? So, what is aptitude? Why is aptitude important? How can I develop the right kind of aptitude for the civil services? Is it even possible to develop an aptitude, or is it something that you are born with? Is another question that we need to know. So how? And then again in the how, I can split it further into sub questions, which will be that what are the ways in which aptitude can be developed for civil services? Possibly, what are the challenges that may be faced in developing an aptitude towards the or an aptitude for the civil services? So once I have understood the what, why and the how of this, and if I have certain examples around the why, I have some examples around the how, that is what I need to do. Now I am not telling you that when you sit with the syllabus for these 5-10 minutes, you start filling this. But every day when you sit with the syllabus, at least think that what all can UPSC ask related to this particular word or term that has been mentioned in the syllabus. If it is mentioning emotional intelligence, what is the meaning of the term emotional intelligence? Why is it important? How can an individual cultivate emotional intelligence? What are the challenges that we face with respect to administration and ensuring emotional intelligence? What are some of the successful case studies of where individuals have been trained on emotional intelligence? What is the role that is played by law? What is the role that is played by schools? What is the role that is played by family in developing a person's emotional intelligence? Why am I bringing this law and school and family and education, etc.? Because that is also a topic that has been mentioned. Role of society, role of family, role of institutions in shaping values. So when I'm reading about emotional intelligence, which is a very important value that every civil servant should have, then I also need to be relating it to some of the other aspects that have been mentioned in the syllabus. Can emotional intelligence be taught in schools? That's the question that I should ask. Or is emotional intelligence only taught at home? Or is it a mix of two? So every day I have to sit down with the syllabus for the next few days. My suggestion will be do this exercise for at least 10 days and try to think that what are the things which can be connected with each other? What are the ideas which may have some interconnection? When I start doing that, my mind starts working in a very comprehensive and a broad manner. And the kind of questions that we have been facing in the exams will be easier for us to write answers to, because questions that UPSC asks, they expect you to apply various concepts that you have studied as a part of that particular paper and preparation, and bring those experiences, that understanding into your answer writing. And why only restrict to paper 4? While you are writing answers in paper 4, you may draw examples from what you may have studied in environmental sustainability or environment, what you may have studied in polity and governance, what you may have studied in international relations. So all the 4 papers do not need to be treated as silos, and more importantly, all of the topics within paper 4 itself should not be treated in silos. As I said, that all of them are interconnected to each other. So knowing that interconnection, knowing what are the linkages that can be built between these topics also becomes very important. Now, in order to prepare well for this particular section, I have put down a 3-fold approach. So I was thinking that what is it that needs to be done by any candidate to secure 130 plus marks in General Studies paper 4, and this is what I suggest: content, comprehension and performance and application. First and foremost, and the most important thing, of course, if I have to do well in this paper or in any paper, is that I should have the basic knowledge, which means that I need to have my content ready, and I will tell you how I need to prepare my content. But I need to be first content ready. What being content ready would mean is, for each and every term that has been mentioned in the syllabus, I should know the definition. Whatever terms that have been used in the syllabus, whether it is emotional intelligence or whether it is compassion or whether it is objectivity or dedication to public service or tolerance, or for that matter probity in governance or code of ethics or code of conduct, I need to prepare definitions for each of these particular topics while I am preparing for the ethics paper. The second thing that I need to do is that I need to have some examples around those terms that have been used in my syllabus. Now these examples can be from your own life, personal life, and that is what your first priority should be. For example, the value of dedication to public service or value of objectivity has been mentioned in the syllabus. Through my school, through my college, through my other experiences, possibly at work or in the family, have I at any point of time shown objectivity as a value in my behavior? Was there any circumstance where I failed to show objectivity in my behavior? I need to recollect those experiences from my personal life. One important observation that we have made while going through the previous year topper copies and talking to some of our successful students in the past has been that when you use examples from personal life, they tend to have a better impact on the examiner. Again, all of this is a mere speculation because we don't really know that on what basis the examiner is awarding marks to the candidates. But having said that, whenever I am able to use examples from my personal life in writing answers for General Studies paper 4, the chances of me getting higher marks are going to be better. So examples from personal life, examples from public life or public individuals. Important personalities such as Lal Bahadur Shastri or Jawaharlal Nehru or Dr. Ambedkar or Mahatma Gandhi or Mother Teresa or Nelson Mandela, Abraham Lincoln could help us in using some of those examples in our answers. So for each term in the syllabus, I need to know the definition, I need to have certain examples. They can be from personal life, they can be from public individuals. These examples may be something that I come across in the previous year papers itself. Now this is also another interesting thing. Often when you will analyze the case studies of the previous years, there also you will find a few examples and illustrations. What I mean to say is that if I am preparing what is the importance of emotional intelligence for a public administrator, for a civil servant, in order to prepare that particular topic, in order to know about what is the importance of emotional intelligence or what is the importance of objectivity for a civil servant, what I can be doing is that I can even get certain illustrations from the previous year questions case studies. That so and so civil servant has been posted in so and so area, and then he's facing this kind of a problem where the tribal community is protesting and they are saying that our land is being snatched away in the name of development. On the other hand, there is a huge amount of pressure that has been created on the government for starting this mega power project very soon in order to address the problems of shortage of electricity across the country. Now you're caught in a situation and there is a dilemma which has been given by the UPSC examiner in the previous year case study. You can use this kind of situation itself ditto in your answers to show that in order to be able to overcome such a situation, a civil servant needs to be emotionally intelligent. They need to be objective, they need to be impartial and non-partisan in nature. They need to believe in the idea of inclusivity. The point that I am basically trying to make here is that whenever you are preparing any topic for the as per the syllabus, and when we are preparing our content, and I'll show you how the content needs to be prepared, at that point of time, please try and draw examples not only from public individuals, not only from personal life, but also from previous year questions as well. You can get a few illustrations that you can use as it is in your answers. Then, apart from it, as far as the content portion is concerned, now as far as the content portion is concerned, I also need to know the importance of whatever term that I am preparing. Definition, examples is one thing, but I also need to know the significance or importance of that particular term. Why is it important? Why the examiner has placed that particular term in the syllabus is another thing which I will need to know. And then I need to get into the specific dimensions according to the topic as well, and I will be showing you that. Once I have my content ready, then the second part in ethics paper which is very crucial is comprehension. Comprehension of what? Comprehension of what has been written in the paper. To be able to understand section A questions in itself has become difficult because the kind of language that UPSC has been using in the questions in the recent years. For example, last year there was one question that troubled many students, that troubled many candidates. So what was the question? I'll just show it to you and we'll come back to that question in a bit. But this was the question which put many candidates into trouble, which was about not being troubled by trouble. So such an irony. So the question is that those who in trouble untroubled are. Those who in trouble untroubled are will trouble itself. What does this mean? Being able to decipher what the examiner is saying is the most important skill that you need to have. Singular most important skill that you need to have in order to do well in UPSC Civil Services examination. Not just limited to paper 4, but applies to all the papers. Being able to understand the gist of what the question is something which is very important. What does this mean? Can someone explain? Those who in trouble untroubled are will trouble itself. Yes. Absolutely. So this one is saying those who in trouble untroubled are. When the going gets difficult, when the situation and circumstances are difficult, if a person remains calm, unfazed, untroubled by trouble, then that individual can trouble the trouble itself. That is, that individual can easily overcome any kind of difficulties and create a problem for the challenges itself. How do you create a problem for challenges? By solving them. So all that this is trying to say is that if you are an individual who is not troubled by any difficulties, any challenges, you remain calm, you remain unfazed, you do not take stress for difficult situations and circumstances, and you allow your mind to function in the best possible manner, then you will be able to overcome the trouble and you will be able to eliminate trouble as well. You will be able to eliminate any kind of challenges with that mindset, and that's what this question is all about. But when we look at this question in the examination, it may send some kind of shivers down our down our spine, where we may start thinking कि ये UPSC ने पूछ क्या लिया है. Many candidates, those who walked out after the examination, and they were like कि ये क्या question था. And as I said, ironically, the question is about not getting troubled by any kind of difficulties and challenges, and many students got troubled by this question, which was about not getting troubled. So comprehension becomes very important. To be able to understand the gist of any question, to be able to understand the meaning of any question, and to develop that ability is what is the singular most important skill which will get you success in this examination. UPSC Civil Service examination is not about dumping content on the examiner. I know about constitutional morality, I will write whatever I know about constitutional morality without answering what the question is asking. That is not how this exam works. In UPSC Civil Service examination, my attempt has to be to understand the question, to be able to grasp what the examiner is asking, and then curate the content that I have according to the requirement of the question. And that is what will get us marks. And we will be discussing how do we work on these comprehension skills. And then the third and the last one is performance and application. I have all the content. I also understand how to decipher a question. I have deciphered 100, 200, 500, 1000 questions. I have been able to do that for many questions, but I do not know how to write the answers in a timed manner. I will not be able to do well. So these are the three pillars which a candidate needs to keep in mind if they have to do well in the ethics paper, and we will get into the details of each of these pillars. First, let's start with content a very important pillar of preparation. So if I have to prepare content, then first I need to know what are the sources that I may refer if I have to prepare the content for the topics that have been mentioned in the syllabus. The most important source for your preparation for ethics has to be the previous year questions, all the questions that have been asked from 2013 onwards, since the pattern of the examination change and this paper was introduced. Every question is very important. If you will go through some of the questions asked in some topics, you will find that many of them were literally a repetition of the questions that were asked in the past. Questions on topics like citizen charter have been repeated multiple times again and again. On probity in governance, repeated multiple times. Topics like compassion, empathy, sympathy have been favorite topics of UPSC. Code of ethics, code of conduct, questions that have been asked by UPSC have been reiterated, have been changed in some language and have been asked by the examiner again and again in the paper. So one good thing about doing PYQs in General Studies paper 4 as compared to any of the other 3 papers of General Studies is that there is a high probability of repetition of that question in the exam. So from that perspective, it becomes important for me to go through the previous year questions. But not only that, when I go through previous year questions, it also gives me material to develop my comprehension. The second pillar of our preparation strategy that I was discussing. When I try to break down previous year questions, when I try to develop my comprehension skills on the basis of previous year questions, there can be nothing better than that to prepare me for the exam. Please do remember that when you look at the UPSC exam, the idea is not to just have some content, again as I said earlier, to dump on the examiner. But उस content को कैसे apply करना है वो बहुत important है और उसके लिए comprehension skills बहुत important है. So therefore PYQs can become a great source for me to understand what kind of questions UPSC asks, to possibly have some ready-made answers for some topics that may be repeated in future in the paper. Thirdly, to be able to develop strong comprehension skills. You must try and attempt various test series as well in order to get a good command over your comprehension skills. Even if you are not able to attempt test series of multiple coaching institutes, you can pick up test series of one coaching institute, and for the other coaching institutes what you can do is, maybe for 2-3 other prominent test series that you come across, you can just take the printout and try and brainstorm the answer. Try and break down the question. There is no need to write a full-fledged answer if I have already written one full-length test today. But what I can do is that from some other coaching institutes question papers, I may be able to do better brainstorming and develop and sharpen my skill of being able to decipher what the question is asking about. Then, apart from it, topper copies. When you go through the topper copies, that will give you a direction on how the answers are supposed to be written. Here, I must tell you something interesting. In every year, we see toppers have a completely different approach of writing the answers, and despite having diametrically opposite approaches, we have seen candidates securing equivalently high marks. If you go through the answer copies of Garima Lohia and you compare them with Aditya Srivastav, and then you compare them with Shruti Chaudhary, or when you compare them with the recent toppers like Dr. Raja, etc., then you will find that there is a lot of variation in the way that they are writing the answers, but the marks that they have been able to get, all have been able to do really well. That tells us something very important. Topper copies are not supposed to be used as gospel truth. That if the topper is writing the answer in a certain manner, I also have to completely copy that style and write answers in that same manner only. There can be different styles and different ways of writing answers. I have seen some students write answers in paragraphs and do well in ethics. I have seen some students write answers only in points in ethics and do well. I've seen some students adopt a mix of both the approaches. I've seen some students draw diagrams, some not drawing diagrams. Both have done well. Some students begin their answers with quotes, some end their answers with quotation. Some give examples at the beginning, some give examples with every point that they are writing. Despite that, we have seen that all of them have been able to secure high marks. That tells us something very important. There is no one single approach to do well in ethics paper. Unlike the other general studies paper, there is a lot of subjectivity which is involved. If your answer is well-rounded, if it is comprehensive, if it includes some examples, if it includes some scholarly perspective, it has been written in a structured manner, if it is written in a legible handwriting, then you're bound to get good marks, irrespective of whether you follow a particular topper's approach or not. तो टॉपर की आंसर कॉपीज देखते हुए हमें क्या करना है, ये भी बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, एंड आई विल कम टू दैट एज वेल. The third source that we can be referring is the value added material of Vision IAS. We have been working on revising the value added material, and it includes some really fresh and new examples which can help you in fetching more marks from the examiner. There are statistics that have been provided. There are views of scholars that have been provided with every topic that has been covered. There are quotations that have been provided. So all the ready-made material is available. You don't need to do the hard work of trying to look for quotations on compassion or quotations on objectivity. You don't need to do the hard work of trying to find initiatives that have been taken by the government in order to promote objectivity. That does not mean that you will stop doing your own hard work by reading newspapers and by doing your own research. But at the same time, almost 80% of the content that will be required to do well in ethics paper is present in that value added material. So you may use that as a reference book instead of using some other books which are available in the market, which unfortunately are not very well written. Some of them have been written in a copy paste manner. Some of them, the language is very difficult to grasp. In some of them, examples that have been given are not adequate. Some of them are very bulky also. So value added material of Vision IAS is another source that you can be referring. Apart from it, second ARC report on ethics in governance. So the second ARC has published a report on ethics in governance, and that carries various issues and analysis of those issues as far as ensuring ethical functioning of the government is concerned. Then where do I find examples and case studies? Some of the candidates in the past have done this thing. What they have done is that they have maintained a separate diary with them, and in this diary they keep writing on a daily basis 1 or 2 examples of issues related to ethics. A very simple example will be the kind of trouble which we have seen with the CBSE evaluation in the recent past, the entire OSM initiative. That has raised various ethical concerns and issues. So I can include some text from that in my short diary on ethics, and I will remember that as an example to be cited when I am talking of breakdown of ethical governance, what it can lead to. Breakdown of ethical governance can lead to such horrendous outcomes, where not only will the society suffer at large, but certain specific sections of the society may be impacted the most. The young individuals in our society would be completely disgruntled, frustrated, dissuaded by the actions of the government that are corrupt, that lack morality, that lack ethics. So therefore, that's another way in which I can look at this topic and include it in my answers. A fire broke out in Delhi yesterday. Unfortunate incident, killed so many individuals. I can use that as an example of negligence. I can use that as an example of greed. I was reading that the permission that had been given to that hotel was to run only 7 rooms. They made 25 rooms. What is this but not greed? And what is greed of individuals going to lead to? It can lead to loss of lives. So I can take this example, write it in my ethics diary, and then I will remember that when I am writing an answer on compassion, when I am writing an answer on greed, when I am writing an answer on corruption, when I am writing an answer on negligence, I can use this example. But do not think that these examples will pop up in your head automatically in the examination hall. That will not happen. You have to prepare for it, and that's why you have to write it down somewhere. So there should be a small diary that should be maintained by you, that should include these examples which you think I can use in my answers. And they need not always be negative examples, as I may have discussed till now, but they can be positive examples as well. That there is a civil servant in a particular remote part of the country who has done a tremendous job of so and so initiative. I can include that also in my diary. And in 2 to 3 weeks, if you are writing down even 2 examples on a daily basis, in 2 to 3 weeks itself, you should be easily able to have 50 to 100 examples. And imagine the kind of content and examples that you can have if you're preparing for 1 year. If we estimate roughly 350 days in the year, that are the days on which you are going to be studying for the exam, and maybe 10-15 days you are not going to be doing that. 350 into 2 to 3 examples on a daily basis, you will be having 1000 examples. You will not be able to even use all of those examples, but the list that you will have would be very unique. And every once in a while you can keep referring that diary, and ultimately what will happen, out of those 500,000 examples, maybe 50 or 100 will get stuck in your mind because you're reading them again and again on a daily or a weekly basis, and therefore you'll be able to apply them and use them in the exam as well. But it is not going to happen automatically. I will have to make the effort of writing down these particular concepts, of writing down these particular examples somewhere that I can refer to in an easy manner. It can be even online as well. Now today you have smartphones, tablets, laptops. There are apps like OneNote, Evernote, and then there are a lot of other free apps as well. You can just keep storing all the content at one particular place using these apps. And then you have, of course, the AI as well, and that can also help you, where you can have one particular chat with the AI and you can tell that every day I am going to be giving you some information in this chat. You don't need to respond. You just keep collating it, and maybe every 5 or 6 days you sit down with it and you tell that the command is so and so, the prompt is that you please organize these examples according to the topics that have been mentioned in the syllabus. Where all can I use these examples? AI can do that thinking for you, and you will get some tremendous ideas of where to use those examples in your answers. Should I be using them in emotional intelligence? Should I be using them with respect to probity in governance? Should I be using them in code of ethics, code of conduct? Should I be using them with respect to ethics in international relations? You can have a tremendous knowledge base which can be very useful for doing well in the exam. But apart from that, apart from daily newspaper reading, etc., where else can I find some of the examples, case studies that I can use in my answers, which is very important for scoring well in ethics? I can refer some of these things. For example, every year the government gives Padma awards to individuals for contribution to public service. And Padma awards come with what is called as a citation, that is nothing but a brief description of the work that was done by an individual. Can I try and read maybe 20-30 different Padma citations, remember the names of individuals, those who have been given those Padma awards, and also have the ability to write the work that was done by them either in one sentence or in 2 to 3 words. If I can develop that ability कि मैं एक सेंटेंस में लिख सकूं कि डॉक्टर वर्गीस कुरियन ने क्या किया, या मैं एक सेंटेंस में लिख सकूं what was the kind of work that was done by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, and if I am able to write it in 2 or 3 words as well, in very short, that should be more than sufficient. But again, this preparation has to be done on a consistent, regular basis, and I cannot be just putting that notebook in the corner of my room and forget about it. when I have made the effort to collect these examples, case studies, then I must also make the effort to revise them as much as possible on a periodic basis. I am not saying that you do it daily, but maybe once every week or 3-4 days you should go through that notebook or your diary which includes these examples, and that way slowly and gradually over a few weeks all these examples will be here in the back of your head, and you will be able to use them without even making a conscious choice in the examination hall. And that is what really separates the toppers from the ones those who are stuck with lower end of marks in a paper like ethics. There must be a reason that there are toppers those who are securing 162. There are toppers those who are able to secure 138, 140, 150 in ethics. कोई तो रीजन होगा. वो रीजन यही है कि वो बहुत वेल प्रिपेयर्ड होते हैं, उनके पास पहले से आंसर्स रेडी होते हैं, एग्जाम्पल्स रेडी होते हैं, और उन्होंने प्रैक्टिस किया होता है उन एग्जाम्पल्स, उन केस स्टडीज को अपने आंसर्स में यूज करने का. एंड द इंटरेस्टिंग थिंग इज दैट यू डोंट नीड टू रिमेंबर some 5,000 things or 10,000 things. Only a few handful ideas and concepts should be enough for you to do well in this exam. Then apart from it, there is one book that I always recommend to the students. If you can read it, if you have time, if you have the patience to do that, Justice by Michael Sandel. Michael Sandel is a professor at the Harvard University, and his lectures known by the name of Justice are also available on YouTube for free. Even if you're not able to read the book, you should definitely go through the lectures, at least the first few lectures, and that will give you an essence of how the world of ethics behaves and works. What do we understand by ethical dilemmas? What are the ways to solve different kind of ethical dilemmas? And then lastly, there is one very interesting book which has been written by Gurcharan Das. And this book is nothing but about application of Mahabharata and the various ideas from Indian epics in today's day and age. What is it that we can learn from life of Yudhishthir? What is it that we can learn from the life of Duryodhan? What is it that we can learn from the battle that took place between the Kauravas and the Pandavas? It tells us that ego is the biggest enemy of the mankind. It tells us that jealousy towards other individuals can lead to downfall of big empires and big emperors. It tells us that greed is one of the biggest vices that an individual can possess, and so on and so forth. So there are so many interesting lessons that have been provided in that book. Of course, it is not something which will give you direct benefit for the exam. You will have to use the content in your answers, but when you have time, let's say if you have given your first attempt, you have given the mains, and after mains you have time and you are preparing for next year's exam, then you will have ample of time to read a book like this, and it is thoroughly enjoyable as well. So there are numerous examples that have been given from real life and from the Indian mythology or Indian scriptures which can be used directly in our answers. Now, let me talk about the content bit a bit more. How do I develop content for any particular topic? What is the kind of preparation that I need to do while I am preparing content? Then we will get into the comprehension part. So there is one topic which has been provided in the syllabus, which is foundational values of civil services. Firstly, I need to know what all are the foundational values of civil services. So I will list down all of them. I will list down compassion, I will list down objectivity, non-partisanship, impartiality, tolerance, anonymity, so on and so forth. Now, for each of these values, this is what I need to do. First, I need to know the definition of each of these values. it will not be bad to know the etymology as well, which is basically the origin of this word, where it came from. That helps us in understanding the definition even better. The second one is to have some examples of one, again, personal life as well as that of other individuals, famous personalities, of showcasing these values or not showcasing these values in their behavior and in their actions. Third, I need to prepare points related to importance or significance of this value for civil services. Why should a civil servant show empathy and compassion in their behavior? Why is it important for a civil servant to be tolerant? I should have multiple pointers related to that. Fourth, I should have what are the challenges faced in the government. What are the challenges that are faced in the civil services to ensure compassionate approach? What are the roadblocks that prevent the civil servants from being compassionate when they are doing public dealings? What are the roadblocks for a civil servant to remain anonymous with respect to their work? What are the roadblocks or challenges that come in the way of a civil servant being non-partisan in their behavior or not being partial in their behavior, not being biased in their behavior? Fifth, I need to know what are the ways in which a civil servant can be trained to be compassionate, can be trained to be objective. So, methods or ways to inculcate these values. Methods to inculcate these values in a civil servant. Ways to inculcate these values in a civil servant. Sixth could be some recommendation of a committee or an expert body with respect to a value or that particular idea. Seventh is to have some quotation ready. Even if one for every topic, every value that has been mentioned in the syllabus from some scholar. And please remember, at times one single quotation can be used in multiple topics. So हो सकता है मैंने compassion के लिए एक quotation याद किया था, but मैं उसको emotional intelligence में भी use कर सकता हूँ, because ultimately, as I was telling, that to be compassionate you require emotional intelligence. So having some quotations ready would also be required. So these are the things that I will need to do as a part of my note making for each of these topics or terms that have been mentioned in the syllabus. Let me show you how we approach this while we are taking up this in the classes. So when we are taking classes and when we are discussing the concept of sympathy, empathy and compassion, we tell the student these are the basic definitions. That sympathy means to be able to show concern for someone else's suffering. Empathy means not only showing concern but actually trying to feel the pain and the suffering of the others by cognitively putting yourself in shoes of the others. Not of course physically or in real, but trying to take your mind to feel what it would feel if you were in the position of the other individual. And the third one is compassion, which is not only being able to understand and to be able to relate to the pain and the suffering of the other individual, but taking measures in order to relieve that pain and suffering of the individual. तो मेरे पास ये sympathy, empathy, compassion अगर terms mentioned है syllabus के अंदर, इन तीनों की definitions मुझे पता होनी चाहिए. I don't need to necessarily have a specific definition. My definition also can vary from one answer to another, but the broad idea should remain the same. I should be able to catch the gist of that particular definition. Second, once I am done with that, maybe a few more things about how a person can be compassionate. What are the steps that are required for an individual to be compassionate? For example, here I have mentioned to be aware of someone's feelings or sufferings, to be moved emotionally by someone's feelings or sufferings, then having a desire to relieve the pain and the suffering of the other individual, and lastly, taking steps that are necessary for relieving the pain and the suffering of the other individual. And then I can possibly have some quotation as well. For example, this one is a beautiful quotation, and this is very simple as well for me to remember. Love and compassion are not luxuries, rather they are necessities, and without them humanity cannot survive. Very easy to remember, but I can use it at so many places. I can even use it in case study. If there is a case study that has been given by UPSC on an old woman approaching me and asking me for help, and I am the DM of the district and there are certain scenario that has been given, while I am giving my conclusion, and if I have highlighted that I need to be compassionate towards that old lady, I can always use this towards the end of my answer in the case study as well. I may use this at the beginning as well. So one quotation can have multiple applications is one thing that I need to know. Then what else? I need to have examples ready. Again, examples may not be the same for you as they may be for me. In fact, I always होनी चाहिए, जो मैं आपको बता भी रहा था न्यूज़पेपर से हम कैसे ढूंढ सकते हैं. बट हाँ, वो अगर लिस्ट में नहीं बना पा रहा हूं कुछ टॉपिक्स के लिए, और ड्यू टू पॉसिटी ऑफ टाइम I am just less than 3 months away from the ethics examination and not done anything on this topic earlier, then in that case I may use the examples that have been given by the teacher in the classroom. But other than that, I have to usually refrain from using the examples that have been given by the teacher in the classroom, because everyone else will be writing the same. So what will be the differentiating factor in my answer? Again, you will find numerous examples in the newspaper, and you don't need to write these examples in detail. You just need to make a small mention. I'll give you a very simple example. Those who are untroubled by trouble, they trouble trouble. When I am writing example of this, I can talk about Edison failing 1,000 times before finally coming up with the bulb. So now when I'm mentioning that, when I'm mentioning importance of this, that this can help us in coming up with innovative ideas, and this can help us in creativity, and it can help us in solving difficult problems, I may give the example, for example, the case of Edison's bulb. That's it. I don't need to explain that Edison failed 1,000 times before he finally came out with the working prototype of a bulb. For example, the case of Edison bulb. That's it. Because in ethics, the word limit is very less, especially in these 10 markers in section A. They may often be divided into 2 parts. So it's only a 5-mark question, which means that you do not have more than 100 words to write, and 100 words also is a liberty that I am taking. So in that case, how much can I write? If I write one example and explain it, all the word limit will be gone there itself. So I have to write examples also in very short. If you go through the topper copies of previous years, you will find that they have made a list of maybe 15 or 20 civil servants and some work done by them. And they keep using those examples here and there in different answers in the question paper. तो वो कुछ चीजें दिमाग में हमें रखने की जरूरत है. Right? So all of this, again, you can find these kind of examples in the newspapers on a daily basis. Then content, as I was telling you, I should also have, once I have examples, once I have definition, then I need to have the significance, importance of compassion in civil services, और उसके लिए मेरे पास 4-5 point होने चाहिए. And not only should I have these points, but I should also have examples to justify this point. For example, if I say that it will ensure that the civil servants can go beyond rules when necessary to serve justice. It may not be as a part of protocol of this particular civil servant to take any of the citizens in their car, but they are doing so, they are going beyond rules in order to ensure true justice. So here when I am writing this and I know the name of this particular SP, SP Pragya Jain, I can say that, for example, जब मैं compassion का example लिख रहा हूँ यहाँ पर, and I am writing the example here, encourages one to go beyond rules when necessary to serve justice. For example, SP Pragya Jain did not care about protocol, or SP Pragya Jain providing lift to an old lady or a pregnant woman despite not being a protocol. तो एक छोटे से सेंटेंस के अंदर I should be able to express it. In some cases I would not even have that luxury as well, and in that case I will have to write SP Pragya Jain giving lift to old lady. That's it. I have to expect that the examiner will understand. I cannot be explaining everything in the answer. Now, so I need to have all these points ready in place for the topic of significance of compassion, and then possibly a few quotations as well. That bureaucracy demands not more files but more feelings. Bureaucracy without compassion, wisdom is ruthlessness, and compassion without wisdom is folly. So I can remember some of these quotations, write it down in my diary, and I can be using them consistently over and over in my answers. Then content would also require me to think other way. What if there is no compassion, then what can happen? What if there is no objectivity, then what can happen? What if there is no integrity, then what can happen? So I need to think the other way as well and have some pointers on that also. Then how do I inculcate empathy, compassion among the civil servants? What are the measures that can be taken? So I should again have a ready list of pointers, and I should also have a ready list of some initiatives as well that I can put in my answers as examples. That's how preparation for ethics is supposed to be done. Now, for each of the topics that are mentioned in the syllabus, I need to have an approach like the one which I told you, and what I actually need to have is these kind of one-pager notes. So last year in the mains advanced batch, what we did was that we provided some of these one-pager handwritten notes. This is my handwriting. One-pager handwritten notes to be provided to the students for each of the topics which are to be covered in the classes. Of course, ideally these handwritten notes, these one-pager notes should be made by you. If you see how I have made the handwritten notes or these one-pager notes for utilization of public funds, there is not a lot that I am writing, but enough so that I can just brush through them one day before the exam, where I am telling what is the importance of probity in utilization of public funds. I have written 5 points. What is the principle of probity in utilization of public funds, or how do I ensure probity? I should ensure efficiency and economy, transparency, and I have written some short points related to that. What are the challenges in utilization of public funds? I have mentioned some of these things, and I have mentioned some examples as well. And then what are the effects of ineffective utilization of public funds? Similarly, another topic that I prepared one-pager note for was a topic called as quality of service delivery. So what are the parameters of quality of public service delivery in public administration? How do I judge whether service delivery within government institutions is up to the mark or up to the standards or not? What are the successes that I have achieved in India with respect to ensuring excellent service delivery in the country? What are some of the global examples? I have written some examples here. What are some of the barriers to quality of service delivery in India? ये सब एक पेज के ऊपर मैंने अपने notes बनाए, which now I can be referring. And plus what I have also done is I have thought of some other things as well. When I am making my notes, I am also thinking that is it possible that service delivery can be efficient and yet unethical? Let me think that way. Do I have some pointer for this kind of an issue? Or can service delivery be quality if it lacks compassion and empathy? That is service delivery only about efficient service delivery, minimal wastage of resources, minimal utilization of resources, or is it also about values like empathy and compassion? So that's the approach that I need to take for each and every topic, and my content will be ready. Of course, this will take some time and effort, but I can assure you the amount of time that you will be spending on papers like GS 1, 2 and 3, here the time investment would be much lesser, and once it is done, it will be done forever. Then after that, the only thing that you need to do is to be applying these content or this material that you have prepared in your answers when you're writing the answers. So this is the first pillar of preparation if I have to increase my score in ethics content. Once I'm done with this first pillar, then the second pillar that comes is comprehension, which is to be able to understand what the question is asking. And that is a skill that I need to develop, where in the examination hall, the moment I read the question, within 15 to 20 seconds, I should be able to get the gist of what the examiner wants me to talk about in that question. And that's the second thing which I'm going to be talking about now, which is how do I build comprehension abilities with respect to any question. Please have a look at this question which was asked by UPSC in last year's mains examination. And after reading this, you may read it once, twice, thrice, and after reading this, write down what do you think is the central idea of this question. What is the examiner expecting you to write in this question? And write it down. Take 1 minute or take 2 minutes and read this question, and then after that write down what do you think the examiner is expecting from the candidate in this question. I don't want you to write down the answer. Just tell me, what do you think this question is asking? What is the central theme and the idea that the examiner wants you to focus on in the answer? Yes, please tell me. What do you understand by this statement? Deciphering a question, being able to break it down, is the most important skill. I have been repeating this since the beginning of the session. If you have to do well in this paper. Okay. So the basic gist is how civil servants can rely upon constitutional morality in order to achieve the objectives of good governance and accountability within public administration. This is what the gist of this question is. Do you agree with me? Do you agree with me? Sir, समझ में आया? क्या? मैं आता हूँ, एक मिनट रुको. समझ में आया अभी क्या मैंने बोला? जो मैंने बोला वो सुना आपने? क्या बोला मैंने? मैंने अभी बोला कि जो मैंने बोला वो समझ में आया. जो मैंने बोला वो समझ में आया. अरे थीम को गोली मारो. जो मैंने बोला वो समझ में आया. जो मैंने बोला वो समझ में आया. मैं रिपीट करूं, आप रिपीट कर सकते हो. How can constitutional morality be used by civil servants for promoting accountability and good governance in administration? रिपीट कर सकते हो? क्या बोला मैंने? Morality नहीं, constitutional morality. What is the meaning of the term constitutional morality? Sorry? Adherence to the principles, the unwritten text of the constitution. That is what constitutional morality means. Constitution may not specifically talk about certain values explicitly, but जो उसका moral है, जो gist है, उसको imbibe करना अपने behavior में, अपने action में, अपने attitudes में, अपनी thinking में, वो है constitutional morality. Constitution morality का एक principle है equality. I should have utmost belief in the idea of equality, non-partisanship, impartiality as a civil servant. I should have utmost faith in the idea of fraternity, of promoting bonhomie, harmony between different sections of the society in India. Free and fair elections, fully functional democracy, ensuring that all the citizens can exercise their right to vote, ensuring that the elections happen in a free and fair manner, there is a level playing field in the elections, is the idea of constitutional morality. How can that help me in achieving good governance and accountability? Now see, breaking down the question becomes very important. Question को देख के घबराना नहीं है. वो कह रहा है constitutional morality is not a natural sentiment but a sentiment not a natural sentiment but a product of civil education and adherence to the rule of law. It is just telling that constitutional morality naturally नहीं आती है हमें, इसको cultivate करना पड़ता है. To believe in the values and ideas of constitution and the basic principles of the constitution, it requires effort, it requires training. That's what this is talking about. And then it says, examine the significance of constitutional morality for a public servant, highlighting the role in promoting good governance and ensuring accountability in public administration. What is the significance of constitutional morality for a public servant in promoting good governance and accountability? Essentially, this question is expecting me to do the following. The examiner expects that I will relate how constitutional morality as a principle can help me in achieving accountability in government and can help in achieving good governance. One of the aspects of good governance is equity. Constitutional morality talks about social justice. When I believe in the idea of social justice, how it can lead to equity in the society. I will give an illustration. I will give an example. When a civil servant deciding over a developmental project not only gives importance to the developmental benefits that will come out of that project, but also individuals and communities which will be displaced as a result of that developmental project, they are not only focusing on social justice, which will help them in achieving one of the principles of good governance, which is equity. One of the principles of good governance is accountability. When a civil servant focuses on operationalizing social audit in their district, in their area of functioning, which is based on the idea of power to people, which is nothing but constitutional morality, participation of people in governance, which is nothing but idea of constitutional morality, it will help in achieving greater accountability in government. So I have to simply relate the principle of constitutional morality to good governance and accountability. One of the other aspects of good governance is participatory governance. Constitutional morality requires me to empower local self-governments, requires me to empower the Panchayati Raj institutions. A civil servant who takes proactive measures for training the Panchayati Raj institutions, officials and representatives, who relies upon the spirit of the constitution for organizing village panchayats and giving them powers, giving them training, giving them taxation possibilities, would help in deepening participatory governance, which would therefore help in achieving good governance. Breaking down the question and understanding the gist of the question is half the work that is done in ethics paper. Let's look at one more question. This ability to be able to break down a question and to come with this, what the examiner is expecting me out of that question, from me out of that question, is something which can only be developed over a period of time. Please read this and then write down in 1 or 2 sentences what do you think that the examiner is expecting us to write in this question, or what this question is about. Do I need to know this particular scholar that UPSC has quoted if I have to answer this question well? No. War is a diplomacy by other means. Critically analyze the above statement in present context of contemporary geopolitical conflicts. War is diplomacy by other means. Diplomacy means to be able to maintain relationships between different countries, to achieve certain international goals. The statement is saying that war is just one of the ways, or war is diplomacy by other means, or war is a way of diplomacy. A very simple example will be how Russia has got on into a war with Ukraine. Why are they at war with Ukraine? What is the reason for them to do so? They do not want Ukraine to join NATO. They are trying to create pressure on Ukraine not to be a part of NATO, and for that they have gone to war with them. War is diplomacy by other means. Could they have achieved this goal of telling Ukraine not to be a part of NATO through other means as well? Yes. Through dialogue, through persuasion, through track 3, track 2 diplomacy, through civil society organizations, through using their soft power, by trying to create awareness among the locals in Ukraine to create pressure on the government. There could have been so many ways in which they could have done this. But it says war is just one means of diplomacy. And then it says, critically analyze the above statement in present context of contemporary geopolitical conflicts. Now please understand, there are a few important things to note in this question. One, एक तो मुझे इस पूरी स्टेटमेंट को ब्रेक करना जरूरी है, दैट वॉर इज डिप्लोमेसी बाय अदर मीन्स. I need to be able to decipher this statement. I need to be able to break down this statement. Understand the meaning of the statement. But then the question is saying that critically analyze this statement. The directive that has been used in the question becomes very important. Critically analyze this statement in context of geopolitical conflicts, in context of various ongoing geopolitical conflicts. So my answer firstly should focus on some ongoing contemporary geopolitical conflicts while I am writing the answer. So it could be Israel, Iran, it could be Ukraine, Russia, it could be Israel and Hezbollah, it could be India, Pakistan, Operation Sindoor, it could be any of these existing geopolitical conflicts. China, Taiwan, China, Japan, China, Philippines and other countries which are littoral states of South China Sea. And then it says critically analyze. When it uses the word critically analyze, do I have to write answer in support of the statement or against the statement? Both. Which one I have to focus on more? Against or for more? When it's a critically analyzed question, it is saying that war is diplomacy by other means. ये एक तरीका है डिप्लोमेसी का. अब मेरे को इसको क्रिटिकली एनालाइज करना है. क्या मैं इस स्टेटमेंट के सपोर्ट में ज्यादा कंटेंट लिखूंगा या अगेंस्ट में? सपोर्ट में लिखेंगे. क्रिटिकली एनालाइज है. डू यू अंडरस्टैंड? क्रिटिकल. I have to look at this particular statement critically. So if I am writing 100 words, 60 to 70 words have to be criticisms of this statement, that I do not agree that war is diplomacy by other means. In some situations, war may be justified as a means of diplomacy, but in most cases it is not, because war brings misery, war brings loss of human lives. War leads to loss of opportunity for developmental opportunities. War from consequentialist point of view is not good. From the teleological perspective, that it leads to, it does not lead to maximum happiness for maximum people. Rather, it reduces the overall levels of happiness in the world, in the universe. From a duty perspective as well, deontological perspective as well, war is wrong as a means of diplomacy. As an administrator, as a politician, my first job should have been to keep the people secure. And that can only happen when I am not going into war and conflict with the other countries, but I am trying to explore other means, minimalistic means to achieve resolution to any international conflict. So it's very important for me to focus on what the directive word is. Is it critically analyze? Is it elucidate? Had this question been elucidate, war is diplomacy by other means, elucidate in context of the ongoing geopolitical conflicts, then what would you have done? अगर ये elucidate या explain होता तो क्या करते? Sorry? In that, no sir, that's not what I am looking for. Geopolitical के examples तो वैसे भी देने ही हैं. It is saying war, let's say if the question was war is diplomacy by so and so said war is diplomacy by other means, elucidate this statement in context of the ongoing geopolitical conflicts. तो क्या मतलब होता है इसका? क्या करते हम इस क्वेश्चन के अंदर? What would have been different in that answer as compared to the answer when I would be given the word critically analyze? What will be the difference? बताइए, बताओ. Yes, we don't need to write the negative aspects. We don't need to criticize the statement. We just need to elaborate upon explaining the statement properly to the examiner. Do you understand difference between elucidate and critically analyze now? बात समझ में आई सर? नहीं आई? Elucidate means explain, simplify. बताओ मुझे कि war is diplomacy by other means, तो समझाओ क्या है? Then I will explain that there are various ways of diplomacy, but war is the most important means that is deployed by nation states in national interest to achieve diplomatic goals. India going to war with Pakistan on Bangladesh issue was nothing but war by diplomacy. War as a tool of diplomacy. So therefore, diplomacy by war was what India was doing. Israel using war to create pressure on Iran to give up its nuclear program is diplomacy by war. You can mention that also. Tariff wars are also kind of wars only. See, the point is not which example you will write here. That I am sure that you people are intelligent enough to find the answer to. Content is not going to fetch you marks. What is going to fetch you marks is answering the question. And that's why I am saying learn to comprehend the question, break down the question, and see what the examiner is expecting me to do in that question. And this ability I cannot develop in one day. It will require consistent, regular practice over a long period of time. For this, I will have to break down all the previous year questions, sit down with them, and हर previous year question के साथ बैठ के मेरे को सबसे पहली चीज तो ये करनी है कि क्या मैं इस क्वेश्चन को एक लाइन में एक्सप्लेन कर सकता हूं. अगर हां, तो मैं आंसर भी ढूंढ ही लूंगा उसका. तो पहले तो वो एबिलिटी डेवलप करनी है, और वो किस तरह से आएगी? प्रैक्टिस से. मोर एंड मोर प्रैक्टिस. नाउ लेट्स लुक एट वन मोर क्वेश्चन. (2024) this was one question which was asked. Please look at this question and then again write down in 2 sentences what do you think this answer demands. इस आंसर में क्या होना चाहिए? The application of artificial intelligence as a dependable source of input for administrative rational decision making is a debatable issue. Use of artificial intelligence for dependable source of input dependable source of input for administrative rational decision making is a debatable issue. Critically examine the statement from ethical point of view. Question is not about that should we be using AI or not in government. Question is that as a civil servant, in order to make decisions, in order to arrive at rational decisions, if I use AI, it is debatable. I have to critically examine this. Again, please remember the statement. Question is asking me to critically examine this with an ethical point of view. मतलब ये जो statement है ये कह रहा है it's a debatable issue. My answer primarily has to focus on it is not debatable. Do you understand? So 40% of my answer will support this statement. It is debatable. But 60% of my answer will talk about why it is not debatable and it does not have any concerns. Debatable means there are some concerns, there are challenges. So 40% of my answer will focus on that. But again, notice that it is saying from ethical point of view. Artificial intelligence has some biases inbuilt into it. Various studies have proven that. Artificial intelligence has been developed by individuals from the Western countries. So there are Western biases built into it. If I apply artificial intelligence for decision making in Indian context, it may lead to biased outcomes as well. That's why it is debatable. I will give example also. Equality in America is not the same as principle of equality here in India. There are various sections of Indian society that have faced discrimination for a very long period of time due to being born in certain families, being born in a certain community. They are not allowed to get into different occupations on the basis of being born in a specific community. So, equality related decision making in India cannot be based only on AI. Debatable. Ethical point of view. But then I would say it is not debatable also because, or it is actually useful because humans tend to have biases and they tend to have their own prejudices that lead to biased decision making. But AI can be trained to be non-biased. You can remove the element of human biasness when you are making decisions with the help of AI. Ethical point of view, again, is AI decision making quicker than human beings? Yes. What kind of ethical argument that I can bring in here with fast decision making of AI? Ethically उसको मैं कैसे justify कर सकता हूं? अगर मैं GS3 में आंसर लिखता तो मैं ये लिखता AI से डिसीजन मेकिंग फास्टर होती है. GS4 में मैं आंसर लिखूंगा तो मैं ये नहीं कह सकता डिसीजन मेकिंग फास्टर होती है तो AI डिसीजन मेकिंग बेटर है. That does not help. Ethical argument नहीं है वो. If decision making is faster, I will be able to reach downtrodden sections of the society at a scale in a quick manner and pull out millions of them from poverty in a short span of time, reducing their misery. Is this an ethical argument to use AI for decision making? Do you understand what I am saying? Difference समझ में आ रहा है? अगर मैं GS3 में लिखता कि भाई AI से डिसीजन मेकिंग जल्दी होती है और इसीलिए हमें AI डिप्लॉय करना चाहिए, तो एग्जामिनर बोलता हाँ अच्छा पॉइंट लिखा है. पर एथिक्स के अंदर मैं इसको इस बात से रिलेट करूंगा कि डिसीजन मेकिंग फास्टर होगी तो मिलियंस ऑफ पीपल दोज हु आर इन पॉवर्टी देयर मिजरी कैन बी ऑल्सो रिड्यूस्ड इन अ शॉर्ट स्पैन ऑफ टाइम. डिलेज नहीं होंगे डिसीजन मेकिंग में एंड दैट वुड एंश्योर जस्टिस फॉर पीपल इन अ स्पीडी मैनर. Do you understand what I am saying? The difference is the way in which I will write the answer in ethics is मेरे को ethical perspective ध्यान रखना है. And then it is saying that as a dependable source of input for administrative rational decision making. I will say that AI cannot be dependent on AI. Critically examine bhi karna hai. So I will say that I can't be dependent on AI as a source of decision making. It can be a tool which can aid me in decision making, but cannot be a dependable source for sure. That definitely is debatable. Again, look at one more question. In the present digital age, social media has revolutionized our way of communication and interaction. However, it has raised several ethical issues and challenges. Describe the key ethical dilemmas in this regard. Social media has become a powerful tool. It has revolutionized the way we communicate and interact with each other. However, it has raised several ethical issues and challenges. Describe key ethical dilemmas in this regard. We need to prepare ethical issues and challenges with numerous evolving ideas in governance, in the society, including AI, including social media, including cryptocurrencies, and so many other things. Now, for example, my question is, what are the ethical issues that social media creates? What are the, it's saying that it has raised several ethical issues and challenges. Describe key ethical dilemmas in this regard. Please notice again, it is asking you describing key ethical dilemmas in regard of social media. Social media has revolutionized the way we communicate and interact with each other. The ethical dilemma that it has created is of privacy of an individual versus the importance of communication and information being available. That is one ethical dilemma it has created. क्या एक इंडिविजुअल की privacy important है या availability of information important है? It's an ethical dilemma, right? So again, think in that direction. Comprehension of question becomes very important. Focus on the keywords. Understand the meaning of each of the keywords. In this document, what I have done is, I have mentioned a list of the keywords that are used by UPSC, directives that are used by UPSC, and what UPSC wants you to do in that particular keyword or directive. I'm sure that you already know about this, and this must have been discussed multiple times earlier as well in various answer writing sessions and in various sessions related to understanding how to write answers in mains, but have clear idea on what each directive demands us to do. And do not be very bothered about that what is the difference between examine and evaluate. Largely it's the same. The difference is primarily between three: elucidate, explain, elaborate, illustrate. Just these are all in one category. Critically examine, critically discuss, critically evaluate are in one category, and then discuss, comment, analyze, examine come into one category. But in that also there are subtle differences which are there. In discuss, I have to discuss both the sides and then I have to give a balanced conclusion. In examine or evaluate, I will have to evaluate the pros and the cons, the weaknesses and the strength, and give one final evaluation or my final analysis on the same. So that's the difference that I need to know about the key directive words also that are used in the answers. So that's the second pillar. Now the third pillar is performance and application, which is once I have understood how to comprehend the questions, how to break down a question, how to decipher what the examiner is asking, then I need to get into the various aspects of applying what I know in the answers. And that will happen only through practice. and for that I will tell you what is the plan that you people should be following ideally if you have to improve. But before that, a few things that you need to additionally do. Have some of these things ready in your diary or notebook, which I was telling, where you should have those examples related to ethics. Some quotations from Gandhi, some quotations from Mandela. What is the idea of Gandhi's 7 sins? What is the idea of the Kant's categorical imperative? What is John Stuart Mill's idea? What are the views that of utilitarian principle? What is John Rawls' wheel of ignorance? Can I use these examples in my answers? Can I use these quotations in my answers? In conclusion, at the beginning, in between. एक बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग चीज हम डिस्कस कर रहे थे एक टॉपर के साथ. He told me कि सर अगर महात्मा गांधी से रिलेटेड कोटेशन आया पेपर के अंदर तो मैं अपना आंसर definitely I used to end with one of the sins of Gandhi, or I would end my answer with another quotation from Gandhi while I'll be writing the answer. There are different approaches that you can adopt, but you should have some of this content ready with you. And not only that, but also be able to understand each and every key word that has been used in the answer and in the question, and to be able to understand the meaning of the same. That also is crucial. Now, apart from it, how do I then actually practice whatever I have learned? One, I would suggest that if you are targeting next year's examination, then in that case, you should start by trying to write at least one answer a day on ethics in the first 1 or 2 months. And then after that, once you have got used to it, once you have written 50-60 answers, after that you get into the mode of trying to write mini tests. Do not then just keep writing one answer, because ultimately in the examination hall you need to develop that stamina to sit there for 1.5 hours, 3 hours to read so many questions and write answers to them. So then get into the mode of writing mini tests, and finally then get into the mode of writing the full length tests. What I have done is that for those who are the students who may be preparing for this year's mains examination, I have just put roughly what a 12-week plan should look like. We have less than 12 weeks right now, to be honest, but what a 12-week plan for the ethics preparation should look like. In week 1 to 2, I should be focusing on content sheets for all the 8 topics. All of that content sheet should be ready, and for this I do not need to completely generate content from scratch. Use value added material, use topper copies, pick up content from there, collate it and write it in 1-pager sheets for each of the topics. Begin your ethics diary from today itself and start writing 2 or 3 examples while you are reading the newspapers into that ethics diary. अगर आप 12 weeks देखेंगे, which is almost 80 days I am talking about, in those 80 days you should be able to easily have 150 to 250 examples, which will be more than enough for writing good answers in the exam. Third, you start with topic 1 and 2 once the content is ready, and also start with writing answers to questions from previous years and test series. 1 or 2 questions you can start writing the answers to. Once all of this is done, then I move into week 3 and 4. Here I will again move into writing 2 or 3 answers for topics 3 and 4, and then at the end of my 4th week I should try and attempt a full length test as well. Of course I may not be able to do really well in this full length test, but that will give me some idea in sense of what is required while I am sitting for 3 hours in the paper. Week 5 to 6 is where it will be a second full length test which will be attempted at the end of week 6. In this week I will be trying to revise whatever I have studied and whatever content that I have prepared, and this will also be a opportunity for me to add more content from my diary entries in my existing answer sheets or in my existing sheet notes. And then finally in week 7 to 8 I go for third full length test, and then the last few weeks are going to be focusing on full length test of section A and section B combined together, and it will come down to final revision. This is the kind of approach which can be adopted. One thing that I would suggest to anyone who's writing the paper this year is that please do not go into the examination hall until unless you have written at least 2 full length tests of ethics, because ethics is one paper in which we find most candidates are not able to manage their time effectively because they do not have practice of writing the test prior to walking into the examination hall, and that's something which you need to develop a habit for and a skill for, and which will require multiple iterations. And that also brings me to one important point that I have mentioned here. This entire preparation that I have said needs to be broken down into 3 pillars: content, comprehension, and performance and application needs to go into a loop as well, which is when you write more answers, you will, your expression, your ability to be able to write better answers will sharpen. When your expression will sharpen, you will also start noticing what are the gaps in your existing content and your notes. When you will fill those gaps, then your understanding of what is there in the question would also improve. अगर मैं ज़्यादा लिखूंगा तो मुझे ये भी पता चलना शुरू होगा कि मेरे खुद के आंसर्स के अंदर कहाँ गैप हैं, एंड वो गैप्स को जब मैं फिल करने के लिए कंटेंट ढूंढूंगा तो ऑफ कोर्स I'll be able to understand obscure questions also in a better manner. Once I will be able to do that, once my comprehension will improve, my writing will also get faster. एक बार क्वेश्चन समझ लिया उसके बाद तो मुझे पता ही है क्या लिखना है. And when you'll be able to improve your writing speed, you'll be able to write more, you'll be able to showcase more to the examiner. आप टॉपर्स की आंसर कॉपी देखेंगे कुछ की तो आप पाएंगे कि देयर आंसर्स आर वेरी डेंस इन नेचर, वेरी डेंस. Some toppers in ethics questions have been writing for even one some part 8 or 10 points. 8-10 point लिख रहे हैं लोग. To reach that level, it will require significant amount of practice. So this is the approach that we need to adopt as far as this entire ethics paper is concerned. But before I finish, there are a few other things that I wanted to highlight to you as per our observations of the topper copies. So let me bring out those as well. So observations from topper copies. First, use or give examples and illustrations as much as possible in your answers, but please remember, examples and illustrations should not come at the cost of answering the question. Should not come at the cost of answering the question. Second, examples as much as possible, if they are personalized, they will fetch you more marks from the examiner rather than writing generic names and examples, which is done by all the other candidates as well. So that's also something which I need to do. Third, don't try and write saintly answers. What I mean to say is that your answers should not look always goody answers. try to show to the examiner that you are an individual who understands practical constraints as well. कहीं पे एक जगह bridge बनना है और वो बहुत important bridge है, but there are some protests that are going on and that bridge is at most important for national security. Practical consideration also requires me to build that bridge immediately. I cannot say that I will wait for the report to come or I will try and address the protest issue first and then after that I will allow construction of the bridge. I would have to go hand in hand. As a civil servant, I need to show practicality. So therefore, your answers as much as possible should be practical and real. Don't be afraid to write some shortcomings as well in your personality. It is okay to showcase that. Examiner is bored of knowing that how ethical all the candidates are and then how suddenly when they get into services, they all turn corrupt. The point that I am basically trying to make is, suppose कीजिए कि कहीं पे अगर एक वो पूछता है कंपैशन के बारे में या ऑब्जेक्टिविटी के बारे में, जरूरी नहीं है कि मैं सारे एग्जांपल्स वही लिखूंगा जहां मैंने ऑब्जेक्टिविटी शो ही की थी. I can also tell to the examiner a situation in which I faltered in showing objectivity and I learned from that experience. And that was an experience that taught me for life how I should not behave, because it gave me a lot of crisis of conscience. It gave me a lot of dissonance within. It made me unsatisfied. It made me unhappy within. And that was a learning for me. When you write these kind of real answers, the examiner appreciates those as well. I am not saying that कि आंसर के अंदर आप ये लिखना शुरू करें आप कितने बुरे हैं, पर अगर आप अपने पास्ट बिहेवियर में कोई शॉर्टकमिंग, अपने एटीट्यूड के अंदर कोई शॉर्टकमिंग या कोई एक रॉन्ग एस्पेक्ट दिखाते हैं, एंड देन यू शो दैट हाउ आई हैव इंप्रूव्ड ऑन इट नाउ एंड आई हैव रिफ्लेक्टेड अपॉन इट, आई एम अ बेटर इंडिविजुअल टुडे, दैट वुड ऑल्सो वर्क. इट इज नॉट ऑलवेज एक्सपेक्टेड कि आप सब अच्छी ही बातें लिखें अपने आंसर्स के अंदर. इट इज ओके टू शो सम follies as a human being as well is another thing that you should mention. Then also the conclusion in your answers as much as possible should be futuristic. It should be positive. But at the same time, do not write conclusions like, and therefore we should always follow ethical approach. Write conclusions which are specific in nature. Some recommendation, some specific recommendation, something that can be done in order to address that problem. Because ultimately जब वो final conclusion पढ़ रहा है तब वो decide कर लेगा कि उसको आपको कितने marks देने हैं. Use Ambedkar or use a Patel or use a Gandhi or use a Lincoln or a Tagore while you are writing the conclusion to your answer. Always try to end it on a positive note in ethics as much as possible, but do not write a very generic statement. So conclusion should be futuristic, positive, yet be specific in nature. Should be very specific in nature. And then one very important point, do not ignore section A. In fact, I would recommend to you start from section A and then gradually move on to section B. Okay. Yeah. So this is pretty much as far as the improving the scores in ethics is concerned. Of course, in a 2-hour session, there is only limited aspect that I could have touched upon. But the idea was that you understand the approach requires one, basic content, but after basic content, understanding the demand of the question, and third, then applying all of the knowledge that I have on piece of paper by consistent practice. One more question that often students ask us is that, how do I get my answers evaluated in ethics? See, if you can find a mentor, someone who has qualified the exam or who has done well in ethics in past, or a teacher who can help you, that will be the best way to go about it. If you cannot, then of course test series is another method. If you cannot do that as well, then peer evaluation is another very solid method. You can have a group of 2 or 3 friends. You can exchange the answers that you write every once in a week. Ask each one in that group to be absolutely as critical as possible of the other person's answers. But when you are critical of other person's answers, you also tend to learn a lot about your own answers as well. And there should be absolute honesty in such peer evaluation, where you tell your friend that be as brutal as you want to be with respect to my answer, and I will do the same, so that we are able to improve together. So find 2 or 3 like-minded individuals who can help you in peer evaluation is the third way in which you can go about it. And in fact, I would say that a combination of first and third really works well, apart from having a test series which will give you some feedback, but you should not take that feedback absolutely seriously. Take it with a pinch of salt, because there are variations in the evaluations that are provided by different evaluators at different coaching institutes, because they are also not perfectly trained for evaluation. Many of them are also either former aspirants, or they are also appearing in the exam at this point of time. So take what they give in suggestion with a pinch of salt. Okay, right. So this is all that is there from my end. If you have any questions or doubts, I'll be here. You can come and ask me, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. Okay? Thank you so much.
Where our Mains Edge 45 comes to their rescue. We have very limited time between prelims and mains. Very dedicated guidance, answer writing, continuous mentorship.
Good marks, good rank is equivalent to answer writing practice.
So it's like a proper lab, as the name itself says, where you can experiment, learn, and excel.
So it's relevant, it's specific, it's well researched, and it's in a proper framework which you can use in answers.
And this is where mentoring plays a very important role. So that will be one aspect of mentoring, where faculty will continuously engage with students who are enrolled.
The idea here is not to impart knowledge and content to you. If you people are writing mains examination, I'm dead sure that you people have already done that hard part, and we'll be covering them from the perspective of what questions UPSC has asked and what it can possibly ask related to those particular schemes or themes in the coming years.
The biggest mistake in UPSC prep, thinking that more material equals more marks. You don't need more material, you need a system that works. At Vision IS Delhi, our GS Foundation course is built to move you from confusion to clarity. Here's how.